Trump told his friend Vovka, "You can bomb Moscow too." Some people tell their supervisor, that is, Agent Krasnov told his handlers and puppet masters that if they misbehave, he will turn them into cosmic dust. So the puppet told its puppet masters, twitching on the strings, "Well, all right, let's start from the beginning. So now I'll show you this." So they have 1.5 million subscribers and a reach of, well, a quarter of the planet.
Now a new recording has appeared in which President Trump describes conversations that, according to him, he had with Chairman KNG Xi Jinping and President of Russia Putin during a fundraiser in the year 2024. In the recording that was published, Donald Trump apparently says that he threatened to bomb both China and Russia.
Reported that Trump promised to bomb Beijing and Moscow if...
Let's listen.
"So if you enter Ukraine, we will bomb Moscow right now. I'm telling you, I don't have that kind of public knowledge. The public, I don't believe you." He asked, "But for what?" I replied, "For what?"
And then
He was like again, "I don't believe you." He believed me 10%, and I already told him that he believed me 10%. Then I went to the chairman of the China Securities Index from China, and he told him the same thing. I said, "You know, if you enter Taiwan, I'll make you rich in Beijing." He thought I was crazy.
he said,
"You say you're going to get by in Beijing." I said, "They don't like me." I say, "Tell me what they're going to do in Beijing." And he didn't check me, except maybe 10%, and 10% is really all you need, and 5% is enough. And we never had any problems.
Well, although the recording isn't always very clear at times. It's clear that President Trump was saying that he actually threatened Putin, that he would bomb Moscow if he entered Ukraine. Well, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov refused to confirm whether the phone conversation that Trump mentioned actually took place.
This information came in at the same time as the White House changed its stance on Russia.
And they stated that now more will be sent to Ukraine.
Weapons.
This happened after it was announced that further arms supplies would be suspended. Let's talk to Ambassador Stuart Eisenstadt.
He
Was a special advisor to Donald Trump on Holocaust issues and former United States Deputy Secretary of the Treasury. He was also the United States Ambassador to the European Union. Good evening, Ambassador Eisenstadt. Good evening. Thank you for having me. We're very glad to have you with us. What is your reaction to this recording in which Donald Trump claims that he allegedly threatened to bomb Moscow in an attempt to restrain President Putin?
In fact, Trump has already said a long time ago that he threatened to bomb Moscow. The only news for me was that Donald J. promised to do the same thing with Beijing. Does that explain their strong desire to see him outside the White House right after his first term ended? And not to the residents, accordingly, of the Oval Office.
For months and months and months, for many months, the president refused to put pressure on Putin, even despite numerous phone conversations that, according to him, were unsatisfactory. Now, the situation has changed in several ways. First, just today, he announced that he would resume selling weapons, specifically defensive arms, to Ukraine after holding them back for several months. Second, today there was a real signal from Senator John Thune, who is the Senate Majority Leader. And he agreed to advance a bill that has an astonishing 85 co-sponsors. Among senators, that's almost every one of the 100 senators. The bill is bipartisan, half Republicans, half Democrats, and it's led by President Trump's closest advisor in the Senate, Senator Lindsey Graham. And this is the most unusual bill on tariffs that I've ever dealt with, as well as on fines and sanctions. This is the most striking sanctions bill in history, It provides for the introduction of 500% tariffs on any country whose companies do business with Russia on sanctioned goods. I believe this could be a misconception. But the fact is, Tune wouldn't have brought up this issue and stated that it would be adopted by the end of August if he hadn't received a signal from the White House. And at the same time, the majority leader, Congressman Johnson, who recently pushed the big, beautiful bill for Trump, announced that he is also interested in this bill. So these are major changes, and hopefully they will serve as an important signal to Putin that he no longer has an open door in the White House. What is their
real efforts to impose sanctions? There is something to look into here, Mr. Ambassador.
First of all, regarding
this recording, yes, of course, the quality isn't very good. It's not entirely clear whether he really made this threat to President Putin, who of course still went ahead and started the invasion of Ukraine. In 2022, by the time Joe Biden was already in the White House,
they don't know about it. It happened at the end, if I'm not mistaken, of 2020 in the second half of the year, in any case.
In his first term, he faced a situation when, during the Obama administration in 2014, Russia had already annexed part of Ukraine, namely Crimea. And during his first term, the so-called little green men without any Russian identification marks. But clearly, Russian military forces had already started combat operations in Donbass, where fighting is still ongoing. So we definitely don't know when this will happen. But considering the fact, as I already mentioned, that the Senate bill will now be put to a vote with an astonishing 85% of the Senate as co-authors led by Lindsey Graham, the senator closest to the president. And what about in the House of Representatives, if the Speaker is interested in this? This wouldn't have happened if they hadn't received at least a yellow, if not a green light from the president, because before that, the White House wasn't ready to bring the bill to a vote. This is very important because...
So do you think that there have really been changes from President Trump now? Because we've heard week after week how he said he's starting to get irritated, that President Putin is irritating him more and more. Putin, of course, rejected all attempts to achieve a real ceasefire. President Trump made such proposals, and now it seems he even went against the opinion of his own Secretary of Defense to resume arms supplies to Ukraine. And, as you said, new steps are indeed being taken now to introduce very tough sanctions against Russia.
Let's think about what happened. During 6 months in the White House, in this second term, Trump talked to Putin about peace. And Putin claimed that he was ready to stop the war, which he himself actually started. But supposedly the Ukrainians don't want to stop it now. And Zelensky and his team gave every reason to suspect that Putin was right. The atmosphere in the Ukrainian media was and remains anti-Trump. Zelensky put on a circus with the minerals, almost disrupted the negotiations, and left the Ukrainian ambassador in place. Several high-ranking United States officials demanded that she be removed. By the way, it was just announced that the Sow, that's her nickname in Washington, is finally leaving. Whether she got tired of it herself or Zelensky finally made up his mind, we don't know. But you can't drag it out forever. I'm talking about Putin. There comes a time when you have to answer for your words, and that's where Putin has a problem. Russia can't continue this exhausting war for much longer, and he needs to resolve the situation, but in a way that no one can say he's weak. That's why the attacks on Kyiv have quadrupled, and there's pressure for Ukraine to quickly decide to give up either all its territory or the regions that Russia has declared as its own. And as a victor, Putin sits down at the negotiating table and bargains for the lifting of sanctions, as well as the removal of any verdicts like those from The Hague and other courts. Only to the person who told you, if you invade Ukraine, I will bomb Moscow. You can twist someone's arm for a long time, but not forever. And eternity ended on July 8th, 2025. It snapped. And Trump said to open the border, send weapons, and accept new applications from Ukraine. And also, Senate, go ahead and pass the bill to punish anyone who financially supports Russia by buying their oil and gas. The Senate, well, there are already 85, some even say 86 senators now. They agreed to slap 500% tariffs on all companies and countries that buy, process, transport, and resell Russian oil. And we will also give Ukraine tattoos. Where are the illegal tankers carrying Russian oil now, those registered devils, where there's no record anywhere that they entered Russia and were filled there? Well, so that they can be tracked down and neutralized, Ukraine has already learned how to do this. It's not clear yet who's cleaning out whom, but a purge is happening. I don't know anything about internal Kremlin politics, so I won't make any judgments. Just a selection of interesting facts.
It is reported that Vladimir Putin has arrested one of his own military commanders.
It is believed that General Sergei Surovikin and
Viktor Striganov was detained in Moscow, where today the former Russian Minister of Transport was found dead.
this could mean the beginning of a purge at the top of the Russian military leadership. Putin may have started purging everyone he considers a threat to his power.
Newsmax believes that this is Putin removing everyone who could threaten him and his inner circle. Some people think that the Kremlin factions are fighting for influence. There's a theory that these are echoes of the arrest in Beijing. By the way, something is happening in any case.
Russia's elite is under attack, not by an external enemy, but by President Vladimir Putin himself. Just in the past year, top generals, billionaires, and people close to power have been arrested, sent into exile, or mysteriously silenced. From the shocking arrest of Timur Ivanov for bribery to the downfall of gold magnate Konstantin Strukov, now no one seems to be safe. And these are not isolated cases. This is a calculated purge that reveals cracks in Putin's power. So what is really happening here? In this video, we'll figure out why Putin is turning against his own people and what it means for the future of Russia and ultimately the whole world.
In Russia, where everyone steals and everyone takes bribes, how can you pay your higher-up if you haven't taken the right way yourself? And how can you keep your position if you don't pay up the chain? In Russia, everyone steals and takes bribes, starting from the beat cop. The women who work in those offices, whatever they're called. I've forgot the name of that dreadful place. Thank God I forgot what they're called. In Russia, the housing office makes all the decisions. It is the foundation of the country. So, from them all the way up to the prime minister. Well, two principles must be followed. First, steal according to your rank. You remember from Gogol, I think, you're stealing above your rank. And second, share with your boss. If you don't share, go to the front. And if you're accused of stealing, it means someone higher up wants to get rid of you.
Why is Vladimir Putin getting rid of his top generals, billionaires, and close associates? To answer this question, we need to look at the pressure building on the Kremlin, the specific people who have become targets, and the hidden motives behind this purge. With more than 1 million Russian losses, morale is falling and everyone is confused. Equipment losses have forced Russia to rely on outdated Soviet weapons and North Korean soldiers, which is humiliating for their country. In addition, the country's economy is facing serious difficulties due to tough sanctions, falling oil revenues, insane interest rates, and 10% inflation. The situation is very difficult. This has caused a sharp rise in prices for essentials like bread and fuel, and people are irritated, as you can imagine. And although they can't protest openly, the discontent is enormous. What makes the situation worse now is that it's not just ordinary Russians who are under pressure. The elites, including generals, oligarchs, and influential figures, are beginning to show their discontent. Once loyal pillars of Putin's regime, some of them are now questioning his leadership. As the war drags on and their fortunes dwindle. Despite winning a fifth term in 2024, with more than 80% of the vote, independent polls show that trust in Putin's government is declining. That hasn't happened in a very long time. He may have rigged the elections, but now the real situation in the country tells a different story. Realizing the predicament he's in, Putin is now acting aggressively.
How much does it seem that the situation is developing like it does in totalitarian regimes? You can express protest openly, but behind the scenes and secretly, right in the corridors, deals are being made, partnerships are forming, and someone is informing.
On July 7th of this year, Roman Starovoyt, the former Minister of Transport of Russia and ex-governor of the Kursk region, was found
Dead in his car near Moscow. The former Minister of Transport of Russia was found dead today, a few hours after Vladimir Putin dismissed him. According to officials, the body was found in his car in one of Moscow's suburbs, and most likely, he shot himself. And that wasn't the end of the day.
Mere hours following Starovoyt's death, another official, Andrei Konyuchok, passed away during a Ministry of Transport meeting. There was no warning or explanation. He just died suddenly in the middle of the workday. The 42-year-old was reportedly healthy and worked in the ministry from which Starovoyt was recently dismissed. It's hard to imagine anything more suspicious. Andrei Beterlov, vice president of the company Transneft, the Russian state oil transportation giant, was found dead under a window in a prestigious district of Moscow. The police said he left a note, but falling from windows has become a grim calling card among the Russian elite. If you've seen enough headlines about deaths in Russia, you already know this. Besides these deaths, there are also arrests. On July 7th, the day of Starovoyt and Konyuchok's deaths, Viktor Strogunov was detained. Viktor Strogunov was the ex-first deputy chief of Russia's National Guard, a potent security agency under Putin's direct command. He was detained on charges of abuse of power and bribery. Authorities said he received over 1 billion rubles, approximately $10 million, in illegal payments. The army was also involved. On the same day, Colonel General Khalil Arslanov, a top army commander, was sentenced to 17 years in prison. Until 2020, he was a leader in the general staff. The investigation found that he embezzled 1.6 billion rubles, around $20 million, through unfavorable deals with a company supplying telecommunications equipment to the army. And the purge wasn't limited to just officials. At the beginning of 2025, billionaire and gold miner Konstantin Strukov tried to flee Russia on his private jet. The authorities stopped him, froze his assets, and opened a corruption case against him. What's suspicious is that Strukov wasn't even a rebel. He was a loyalist, a supporter of Putin, but that didn't save him. His arrest sent a clear signal to the richest people in Russia. Your money will no longer protect you. At this point, you can't help but wonder, is there anything at all that can protect you? The roots of this purge go back to Kursk. In April, two high-ranking officials, Alexei Smirnov and Alexei Dedov, were arrested for embezzling more than $12 million. The funds were supposedly for border reinforcement. Smirnov succeeded Starovoyt as governor, with Dedov as his deputy. Their arrests followed Ukraine's attack in 2024, which revealed just how weak these defensive structures actually were. The public was outraged, and someone had to be held accountable.
That is, failure at the front, fueled by rumors and facts of corruption, leads the people to indignation. And it will either be directed at the main figure, or if Putin succeeds, at the negligent and thieving subordinates. Also, the failure of Chinese weapons is attributed to the Chinese Communist Party, as well as the lack of training of Pakistanis and the negligence of Iranians. Everyone is to blame except those who are actually guilty.
One of the most prominent figures caught in this network was Timur Ivanov. Until April 2024, Ivanov held the position of Deputy Minister of Defense and was a key figure in Russia's military machine. He was a close associate of Sergei Shoigu. At least 23 oligarchs have died under mysterious circumstances. Some fell out of windows, some suddenly had heart attacks, and one even died from toad poison. Some of them were under investigation, while others were not. But they all had one thing in common. They were influential, wealthy, close to the Kremlin, and died one after another. Such cases exist at all ranks. The purge extends to regional officials, mid-level bureaucrats, and even vocal nationalists who criticized the war's direction. For example, Major General Ivan Popov, a former commander in Ukraine, was arrested in May 2024 on charges of fraud after he publicly criticized the military leadership. Popov was one of the loudest critics of Shoigu and Valery Gerasimov, Russia's top general, accusing them of mishandling the war. His arrest was not just an attempt to silence a loudmouth, it was a signal that even decorated officers who fought for Russia could be removed if they crossed the line. The scale of this purge is striking. In just the first half of 2024, more than 4,900 cases of bribery were registered in Russia, which is 55% more than 3 years ago. According to the Russian media outlet Verska,
From afar, it seems to us that it's Putin getting rid of everyone who could stand in his way, everyone who could be blamed for failure. But what was happening in Russia is typical for all dictatorial regimes, especially when they enter a period called the Patriarch's Decline. Many pessimists say it can't get worse than Putin, but I'm an optimist. I say it can. Perhaps Putin's problem with ending the bloodshed in Ukraine is connected to his own future. There may not be much of that future left, gentlemen, since he was born in 1952. While the official website states 1952, he was actually born in 1950 and is 75 years old. He might last another 5, maybe 10 years, if he turns into corpses everyone who could theoretically claim his place, or help someone who wants his place. The war in Ukraine, not yet. Defeats and scandals are far from the most important thing for Putin. The main thing for him is to survive, even if he has to wipe out 3/4 of the planet's population to do it. I don't think he'll be too worried about that. That's all. Goodbye. Until next time. Subtitles created by